What's up, Notre Dame fans? Happy Tuesday. It's Mike Singer from blueandgold.com with our beat writer, Tyler Horka. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to our channel if you have not yet. And, of course, go to blueandgold.com. That $1 for 1 year premium access deal is still going strong. So make sure to head to blueandgold.com and check that out. All the details are there. So Tyler and the rest of the local media were inside the Notre Dame facilities this morning. And got to talk to Notre Dame defensive line coach Al Washington and some of the players. So, Tyler, let's start with your guys' session with Al Washington, one of your first couple times getting to talk to him. Just what were the impressions of talking to him? What was your main takeaway?
It was a little more business as usual than he was the first time we talked to him, which was that maybe mid-February at this point, early February, when the staff was finalized and Al Golden was the last guy to come on to Marcus Freeman's staff. We got to talk to everybody. That felt more like a little party. It felt like, okay, this thing is together. This is what it's going to be, like an introduction. This was, okay, we're 8-9 practices into the spring session, and there's more work to do. It's business time. It's they've spent 2.5 weeks on the football field now. They're 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks away from playing a spring game, which is obviously of the utmost importance. Everything they're doing now is leading up to that spring game, kind of when they showcase what they've been working on to the Notre Dame fan base and kind of the media at large too. Everyone wants to know what Marcus Freeman's first Notre Dame football team is going to look like. Al Washington is a part of that, and obviously there's some moving parts with that defensive line. So just takeaways from today's media session was Al Washington has some work to do in figuring out some of those moving parts that I mentioned. Isaiah Foskey's not going anywhere. He's going to play Viper, right? But across the defensive line, especially with Jason Adamalola out with rehabbing a shoulder surgery that he underwent a little earlier this offseason, there's been a lot of guys moving in and out of that defensive line. It was fun to watch in the full practice that we got to watch at the end of March, and it's going to be fun to watch on April 23rd in the spring game too, because I think there's a lot of guys going for just a few positions, and those position battles to me are as intriguing as any on the team.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about some of that a little bit later in the video. Just thoughts on Al Washington overall and maybe how he might be different than Mike Elston?
Yeah, he seems like a very interesting guy. I think, Mike Elston was also an interesting guy, and I think the players connected with him. But I think Al Washington is kind of even more relatable to these players in a way. He's a little younger than Mike Elston. He's a guy that has worked at various different positions, whereas Mike Elston was with Brian Kelly for so long that he was a Notre Dame guy, and then before that, obviously, he was at Brian Kelly's previous stops as well. But Al Washington brings something new to the Notre Dame defensive line, and maybe that's something that they were missing while Mike Elston was here. Look, Mike Elston was a great coach. It's why he went from one awesome institution to another in terms of college football. But Al Washington is a guy that maybe is bringing something new. And just talking with Isaiah Foskey today, we asked him, why did you come back? Obviously, he wants to win a national championship and he wants to play for Marcus Freeman, but that was before Al Washington was even in the picture. So obviously, Al Washington has added a new dynamic to Isaiah Foskey staying at Notre Dame. And he says Al Washington is trying to make him more of a complete defensive end. We all knew what Isaiah Foskey could do rushing the passer last year. Can he stop the run? Can he get to the quarterback on first down as opposed to third down? There's a lot of different things that Isaiah Foskey wants to be better at as a defensive end. He says Al Washington is pushing him to be that guy. So it's going to be kind of interesting to watch that progression play out.
So you guys met with Foskey, I'm guessing, today. Who are some of the other players that you guys got to talk to, and what stood out from some of those conversations?
Yeah, I spent most of my time, pretty much all of my time while the players were there with Isaiah Foskey. Look for that at blueandgold.com. I'm going to come out with a pretty good deep dive on where Foskey is. Look, this guy could have been in the NFL draft in a couple weeks, right? But instead, we're sitting there talking to him at Notre Dame's athletic facility on a random Tuesday in April. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and the story is going to be really interesting. The other guys that we got to talk to, Howard Cross, Jacob Lacey, that's kind of been an interesting dynamic all spring. It's really been something that's come about since Jason Adamalola went down with that shoulder injury. Everyone knew those might be your two interior guys. And Marcus Freeman just talked about them, Saturday? And he was very he spoke very highly of those two guys and said, look, they're both about 275 pounds, but if those are the two guys we have to play in tandem in the interior of the defensive line, then we're very comfortable in doing that. Now Washington said the same thing as well, and then uh, obviously my coworkers Patrick Ingle, Ashton Pollard, they both talked to those guys, so they'd have more to say. But just based on what I talked to them about in those conversations, they were both very blown away by the confidence of those two guys. Look, these are two guys that haven't really had starting opportunities or haven't even really been in the mix to start. Kurt Hinish was here for the longest time. Jason Adamalola was here. He's not going anywhere. Once he's back from that shoulder injury, he's going to be a starter. So these are guys that, as seniors, have just started to emerge in the conversation of they're going to play a lot and they're going to play very meaningful downs. And they look like they're ready to take that on. The last guy that we talked to, Riley Mills, I think he's maybe the most intriguing guy on this defensive line. Because, like I said, we know what Isaiah Foskey is. We know about some of these other guys that I mentioned, but Riley Mills, is he a defensive tackle? Is he a strong side defensive end? Right now, he's playing both. Al Washington said he's going to continue to play both. I think he's a guy that is just so good and so dynamic that he's going to fit in somewhere and he's going to make plays.
So you've primarily been shooting video of the offense for us at Blue and Gold, and Ashton Pollard's been shooting the defense. But whether it's when those units do combine, and media's only had 3 practices to watch, only one was the full practice. So it might be kind of tough to say. But whether it's reading articles from your colleagues, what you've seen, what the coaches have said, I mean, do you have a few standout defensive linemen through spring ball so far? About halfway through.
Foskey's a dude, and he's going to remain a dude. There was one particular play I remember from the full practice. He went right around Blake Fisher, and not a lot of people at Notre Dame or across college football get right around Blake Fisher. I know Blake Fisher's only played a game and a half, but in that time that we saw him on the field, he looked like a fifth year tackle, not a true freshman. So that was pretty impressive to see Foskey go around Fisher. Again, I'll talk about Riley Mills. Just the fact that we've seen him play inside and outside, I think he's the most versatile guy on this defensive line. And then I'll go back to Cross and Lacey. The thing that Freeman and Al Washington said about those guys is uh, Kurt Hinish, Jason Adamalola, those were your two starters at the two defensive tackle positions last year, right? They were awesome. They plugged up holes great. Adamalola might have been one of the most underrated 3-tech tackles in the country. And yet you bring in Cross and Lacey, and there really hasn't been a drop off. It seems like the holes are being plugged, the push is there in the pass rush, and then when the line of scrimmage has to stabilize and you don't want it to move back at all, those guys have been there in run stops. So I think those guys are going to be really good. Are they as dynamic as Riley Mills as I was talking about? No, but there's only one Riley Mills for a reason, and he's only going to be able to play one spot. So Cross and Lacey are going to have to play. They're going to have to work in tandem at times. I think they can do that. Overall, like I said at the very beginning of this video, you've got so many different guys across this defensive line. There's only one Foskey, there's only one Riley Mills, but that's okay because there's four spots, and you're going to have to use all of these guys. I think Al Washington's going to find a way to do it.
Tyler, about 30 seconds. Give me your starting 4 defensive linemen for Notre Dame against Ohio State. What's your projection right now?
I'd go Foskey at Viper. I'd go Mills at strong side. Jason Adamalola is going to be there at defensive tackle 3-tech. So that really leaves one spot. It's whoever wins out between Cross and Lacey to me. Right now, I probably give the edge to Cross. He played a little bit more last year. That's probably the 4, but like I said, there's so many guys gunning for these 4 spots. Notre Dame's in a pretty good position.
Is that an upgrade or a downgrade from last year's team? That's putting you on the spot on the D line.
Too early to say, but I think there's potential to be an upgrade, just in terms of pure athleticism, for sure.
All right, that's been Mike Singer, Tyler Horka talking Notre Dame defensive line. Guys, hit that thumbs up, and we will catch you next time.